And welcome everybody to the Huddle. It is our weekly streaming sports talk show every Tuesday at this time. Pat Parris and myself. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can share your comments in the messages to the side. Pat, good afternoon. How are you today?
Good. I'm looking forward to this topic. I think we might get some comments as well. A lot of people have a lot of thoughts, I think, on where Arizona is going to end up conference-wise.
Definitely a big topic, a very important one. You know, this is kind of a little bit of our slow time, usually in July, but not with such a big topic and a big subject like this in the future of Arizona athletics. And Pat, I'll start with this. The latest information today and what we're hearing is from CBS Sports' Dennis Dodd. He is reporting that the Big 12 is in deep discussions with multiple Pac-12 teams, including Arizona. And I know you, as an Arizona alum and an Arizona fan, you don't want to see your school get left behind here, and you want to see the Wildcats join and be part of the Big 12. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I think that's probably the smartest, wisest move from just from a bit of a 30,000-foot view, and you look at the landscape of a major college sports right now, Jason, and it's the haves and the have-nots, and the Pac-12 was kind of that fifth of the five major power conferences anyway, and now you lose USC and UCLA in that surprising move. And now it's really, you've got to make a decision and make it pretty fast. You don't want to make it hastily and make the wrong decision. You got to make the right decision, and you have to do it very quickly. You cannot get left behind and find yourself, no offense, in the Mountain West or some kind of a new conference that just doesn't have the cachet that a Big 12 would have as a super conference, potentially with 18 teams. Jason, be the largest in all of FBS.
I don't think that Dave Hickey and Dr. Robert Robbins are going to let that happen. You know, Dr. Robbins is a mover and a shaker. I don't think you're going to see Arizona get left behind here, but you could also see a situation where the Pac-12 might want to merge with the Big 12. But just from the latest news of what we're seeing, I'm not sure that is in the cards as of right now. And where we speak here, we're seeing things and reading things like the Pac-12 is accelerating its media rights negotiations. Well, if they're doing that, that means they're trying to come up with a deal on their own. But you look at what the teams got in 2021, which was $19.8 million a year. That could be a lot less without the UCLA and without USC. And that's going to be a fraction as far as what the Big Ten schools are going to get as far as money, and then what they can then allocate to the resources of their programs.
I've heard the numbers, and I don't know how official they are, but I've heard numbers like, of the Pac-12 schools, the 12 schools in the Pac-12, USC and UCLA make up 40% of their revenue. So you're losing 40% of your market share, let's say.
Which was less to begin with.
It was less to begin with, but if you're going to lose 40%, how do you go and in good faith talk to ESPN and Fox Sports and say, hey, we still are a power player. We're still going to be a Power 5 conference. We may not have UCLA and USC. 40% of our revenue generating and our largest TV market is gone, but don't worry about it. Just sign on the dotted line and give us all this. It's just not going to happen, Jason. They have zero power to negotiate a television deal right now. And it's that kind of a situation that behooves Dr. Robbins and Dave Hickey and the counterparts at Arizona State and Utah and Colorado to get on this quick, jump on the Big 12. Their TV rights are up in 2025. They're trying to position themselves, even with the loss of Oklahoma and Texas, as being just as viable of a conference, if not more so. And imagine if now the latest today was, what if Oregon and Washington joined Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado? Now you're bringing your six best schools left in this conference with you over to the Big 12. 18 teams in the Big 12 spanning all four time zones in this country. Now they're a super conference like the SEC is a super conference, and you've got two super conferences there that potentially, could dominate the landscape for a long time.
If you were replacing an Oregon State or a Washington State with a San Diego State, that might be one thing, okay? Because San Diego State's in a nice city, big city, new football stadium, soccer team already competes in the Pac-12, basketball does well, but there's just no replacing USC and UCLA, and you don't have a second team there. Pat, I'm going to say something else here. What was your reaction when you first heard this? Because definitely a lot of shock for a lot of people who didn't see this coming. But I tell you what, Pat, I think there's going to be unintended consequences here. And I'm thinking about UCLA, okay? Good luck to their basketball team that now has to play a schedule that's going to rival an NBA road schedule. There's no teams around. They're going to have to go on a weekend and play at Michigan and at Michigan State, and then maybe a weekend 2 weeks later have to go to the East Coast and play Rutgers in Maryland. They're going to have home games where they're going to look like a road team. Anybody who's an Iowa fan who's anywhere west of Iowa is going to be going to the Rose Bowl and rooting for Iowa against UCLA in UCLA's own home stadium. I think there's going to be some unintended consequences down the road here for UCLA and USC, who are chasing the almighty dollar. And hey, maybe that's all that's important, but this might have some ramifications down the road. I wanted to get your take on that. If you think there's going to be any ramifications for a USC or UCLA making this move.
Well, they're definitely going to kind of be on an island by themselves in the sense that that LA market is so far away from the rest of the conference. And you're right. There's a lot of travel involved, a lot of major travel involved for USC and UCLA.
You know what these teams are going to do with the money? They're going to have to get their own plane. I'm not being funny here.
No, you're right. You're right.
The Patriots have their own plane. They already chartered flights. That's not going to be enough. They're going to have to get their own plane with tutors on it to go across the country for all these different teams.
Yeah, there's definitely the travel cost. I think USC and UCLA really were hoping that Oregon and Washington might find a way. At least then they would have some partners to play and then travel with, and configure some kind of way to have your travel schedule in basketball. I'm specifically thinking of basketball because football is a different animal. You're right about the planes for football, though, because you're going to need to travel a long way. Imagine having to go to Penn State, then come back for a home game, and then maybe go out to Rutgers and come back. I mean, it could be it could be one of those things where you rack up thousands and thousands and thousands of miles in your football schedule. I think, but though you're making my point as to why you need to have Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, and hopefully a Washington and Oregon, why you really want them all to go to the same conference, because now you've got that already established kind of Pac-12 mentality. And you're going to have, a BYU there as well. And you're going to have some of those Texas schools aren't that far away, Oklahoma State. So what I'm saying is geographically, the new Super Big 12 with 18 teams could easily have two divisions, an East division and a West division. And mainly you're going to stay in that same kind of footprint that you stayed in with the Pac-12, maybe just shifted a little bit further to get some of the Texas schools.
Yeah, here's another unintended consequence. If UCLA is not going to be playing, say, Rutgers football every year because it's so far away, and you're not going to be playing teams every single year because there's so many in the conference, but Penn State is, advantage Penn State in the standings, and as far as that goes. I'm telling you, you don't know what they are. It felt a little bit to me like, I know this isn't a great analogy, but it felt a little bit to me, Pat, like NASCAR leaving North Wilkesboro or North Carolina Speedway and going to Kansas, or putting two races in New Hampshire. Was it really necessary? Now, you look at the money here, and it looks like UCLA is going to get $100 million a year in these TV rights, and maybe they were getting 20 before. Even if that doubled, they're getting 40, so they get 60 million extra dollars. That 60 million is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, Jason, every
I
year. And also, you also have.
Mean there won't be some unintended consequences.
You're right, and what you also have to look at is, we have to be honest with ourselves. We're out here in the West. We're Pac-12 centric, but we're the only part of the country that's Pac-12 centric. And now you're looking at a brand, and the Big Ten brand right now is far superior to the Pac-12 brand. I hate to say it, but it's true. And so what happens with that? When the Big Ten comes and says, hey, we'll take you two and you can become part of our brand. And now we become this entire continent of a conference, and you're going to get all that money from Jason. The Big Ten network is the most profitable of all of the college sports networks by far. It puts the Pac-12 to shame, and the Pac-12 network has been a debacle since the start. It's been an embarrassment for the conference. It's why they lag behind so much and you can come up with 1,000 excuses as to why, but they lag far behind. So when you have the Big Ten come calling with their powerful network, with all their TV contracts, with their cachet of the Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Wisconsin, you go down the line, you've got all these perennial powers in these sports. It was a no-brainer in that sense. Now, if it was the other foot, if it was Arizona and Arizona State that they wanted, would you be having that same? You'd probably be going, well, yeah, there's going to be travel problems, but they'll make it up with all that extra money. You could justify it. You see what I'm saying? There's a lot of justifying when the big brother comes and tells the little brother, you're going to join me and you're going to go.
No, if I'm George Kliavkoff, I'm the Pac-12 commissioner. I'm trying to do what's best for the Pac-12 right now, and that would be actually merging with the Big 12. It wouldn't be trying to add San Diego State and, Lord knows what other school. I see Fresno State talked about. I'm sorry, Fresno State. That's not going to cut it. If I had to pick another school, it would be either SMU, where Dallas is, or UNLV. Major city, geographically close. It wouldn't be Fresno State.
And
you
it would be.
You can't replace. There's no. It's a step down. It wouldn't be one of the 5 major conferences. I agree.
And it'd be a lot different if Houston and BYU hadn't already joined the Big 12. They're going to join in a couple of years. If those are a couple of teams that you could say, okay, they at least have made nice little runs. But even those two schools aren't at the same level of what you want the Pac-12 to. The Pac-12 was already kind of in danger of not being considered one of the Power 5. It might have dropped down to the Power 4 with just one departure, or now it's 2 departure. To me, the Pac-12 is not going to be considered a power conference anymore. If you don't leave it, you're going to be left in the dust, and it's unfortunate because having remembered the day that they became a member of the Pac-10, I hate to see it go by the wayside. I love the whole aura of the Pac-12 after dark, and the we have what nobody else has, and we've got this nighttime football, and you on the East Coast, you're going to stay up really late to watch us, but that's because we're the last of the games and all that. Well, it just didn't work very well, Jason, in the long run, money wise, and it's just not going to work anymore. And
those games are still going to be late, though.
They will.
You want these games not exactly on the same time.
But when you're playing Michigan and you're playing a home game at UCLA is hosting Michigan, you don't think that people are going to stay up and watch that game? It matters a lot more.
Yeah, stay up. Now,
it
what
matters
this is all a result from is boy, my microphone has been on the whole time. Has anyone heard me?
Yeah, I've heard you the whole time. Yeah,
now?
I could hear you. Yeah.
What this is all a result of, is obviously college athletics going further and further away from an amateur model, and with the NIL and with the money getting even bigger, and with these coaches making $10-12 million a year, these football coaches and Nick Saban, and it's just getting further and further away from what the amateur model that it was, and it's now pretty much going to be a professional sports league, or at least a quasi one, and that's part of it, because you go back to the travel. I mean, to have a conference in the Big Ten, yes, the prestige and everything, but you're now having schools from California all the way to New Jersey. It just seems crazy. It really is surreal.
It is. I if you step back, you have to say, this isn't what we envisioned the college football, college basketball, all the college sports looking like. If you were trying to draw it up, there was already a pretty good model in place, and things were going along swimmingly. But then, conferences started growing, the SEC started dominating, and everybody's kind of playing catch up to the SEC and now the Big Ten, and that's just the reality of things. I'm still really concerned, Jason, about the NIL, the name, image, likeness, and how you can patrol that and how you can regulate that. And we have only seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to players making big time money off of name, image, likeness. And the disparity between those that can make a lot of money and those that are just going to have to make the little bit of money that the universities can figure out a way to get to them. It's getting wider, and it's only going to get worse. And that's going to be the next major thing that's going to happen is the NCAA is going to have to figure out a way to regulate it, even though That's going to be tough. There'll be lawsuits, I'm sure, but there's got to be a way that's going to get out of control if it isn't already, and we're just not quite aware of it yet.
All right, let's take a look at these comments here. You're watching The Huddle, on KGUN9 streaming platforms with Pat Parris and myself, talking, of course, about the conference chaos. Wes Stolzek writes, it's all about the money. That's right, Wes.
It is.
That's it. Okay. Don Mills, first comment, might as well jump to the Big 12. Oregon and Washington leaving Pac-12 is not a matter of if, but when. Of course, you think Oregon and Washington want to stay? And I'm sure the Big 12 or the Big 10 would want Oregon.
Well, and real quick, Jay,
want Oregon.
Real quick, when this news all broke at the end of last week, and the statement that came out hours and hours later from the Pac-12 about unified and as a conference, you can put that statement out, and even as an athletic director or a school president, you're going to say, yeah, we're behind the Pac-12. You know that they were in scramble mode. I'm talking about Dave Hickey and President Robbins. They're going to do what's best for themselves, just like UCLA and USC did. They're going to do what's best for themselves. And you might put on a brave front if you're the conference putting out a statement, but in reality, each of those schools is working hard to position themselves, and it's not with the Pac-12.
I don't blame George Kliavkoff. I think he did what he thought was the right thing, which was try to form that alliance last year between the conferences, which was, hey, you don't poach us, we're not going to poach you. Let's not cause this whole mess. But apparently it was USC that got the ball rolling, and they're the ones who wanted to do this, and they got UCLA to follow them, and there you go. So I don't blame George Kliavkoff. Don Mills here, if you want to blame Larry Scott, it sure seems like he had the conference behind with its media rights. Pat, you mentioned the Pac-12 network and its reruns, while other Big Ten networks are showing highlight shows and things like that. We saw softball coach, a former Arizona softball coach, Mike Candrea, complain about that. He felt that's why the Pac-12 got shafted last year in 2021 as far as the seedings in the NCAA tournament. We finally now have Pac-12 softball and baseball tournaments, whereas the other conferences have had them for a while. So yeah, it sure does seem like the conference has been behind the 8 ball here, and that's more a fault, not necessarily of George Kliavkoff, the current Pac-12 commissioner, but Larry Scott, the outgoing one, the one before.
I think that the model, the Big Ten, maybe viewers don't realize this, but the Big Ten network was the first one that formed. The Big Ten went out on their own. Fox Sports was the one that put it together for them. And I know this because I was working for a Fox Sports regional at the time, and they placed it in Chicago. And Jason, they had the power of Fox Sports behind them. So they were able to kind of roll it all, with and the way it works is cable subscriptions are what you need. When you get cable subscribers, they're paying that, $1 a month, whether they're watching the Big Ten network or not. In the Big Ten footprint, everybody's cable bill included a $1 fee for that. I'm just rounding it off. I don't know exactly what it was. So that's what you needed. The Pac-10 was the last one coming to the party, and they tried to form this network, and they went in with this grandiose plan of the 6 different region, the Arizona, the Southern Cal, the Northern California, the mountain schools, the Oregon schools, the Washington schools. And they put all this in, and it just cost them a lot of money to do it the way they were doing it. And they couldn't get on any cable systems, and they couldn't get on DirecTV, and they weren't getting that $1 a month, whether you're a sports fan or not, your cable bill included it. And they just never could get a foothold in that very lucrative end of broadcast and cable television and satellite television. And that is subscription fees. And ESPN's a king at that. Fox Sports has been terrific at that. And Pac-12 has just been and also ran in that market. And it's really cost them over the years.
So we got a question today from our coworker. And the question was, well, what do you see this all shaking out by? And my answer was within the next 30 days. I don't think you're going to see this drag on. I think you're going to see either Arizona joining the Pac-12. How do you see this playing out? Either Arizona joining the Pac-12,
the Big 12,
or the Pac-12 and the Big 12 merging. I think those are the 2 most likely scenarios. I think you could have a situation where the ACC and Pac-12 also merge. And while that makes no sense geographically, well, you would still play the teams on your side of the country for the most part and have occasional games with the ACC schools out there. I think that's another possibility as well. And then that would leave four conferences, four super conferences. Those are the scenarios I see. But if I'm Kliavkoff right now, almost like a company that needs to be taken over by a bigger company, if you will, like a Red Hat, like an IBM buying a Red Hat or something like that, to give an example in the business world. I think that the best thing for the Pac-12 right now is to be swallowed by the Big 12. And I don't think that would put him out of work. I'm sure they'd find a job for him somewhere. But I think that's right now the best thing to do, because if you're the Pac-12 commissioner and you try to scramble and you try to get San Diego State and SMU, while meanwhile Oregon and Washington are going to leave, and you're going to have a fraction of what you're getting TV-wise from the other conferences, I'm not really sure that's the best way to go. You're not going to be considered a power conference anymore. I think the best thing right now for the Pac-12 is to be swallowed up into the Big 12.
We disagree sometimes, Jason. We pretty much agree on this one. I don't think they have a choice. I really don't think the Pac-12 has a choice. For them to continue to exist, they're going to lose Oregon and Washington. They're probably going to lose Arizona and Arizona State. They'll likely lose Utah and Colorado. So what's left? There really isn't an option.
And this is a way to keep Oregon and Washington.
Yes, it is. And I think that when I saw that come out today, that Oregon and Washington are even considering the Big 12, that let me know a couple of things. First of all, it lets you know that the Big Ten really isn't that interested in Oregon and Washington. The Big Ten wanted USC and UCLA, but if they wanted Oregon and Washington, don't you think they could have grabbed all four at the same time? They didn't. And if Oregon and Washington haven't already figured out, the Big Ten, wants them, I don't think they have. My point is, I think that Oregon and Washington sees the handwriting on the wall. Nobody's knocking at the door from the Big Ten saying, come join us too. Yep, we want you too. So I think they see their best bet is to go to the Big 12 and make this a super conference. And if the Big 12 will take the Oregon, Washington, and Utah, Colorado, Arizona State, then it becomes this super 18-team conference, and I'm all for it. I think the bigger is better, as long as it doesn't get too big. And in essence, if you take the Power 5 and make it a Power 4, that's probably going to strengthen the Pac-12 as a whole, becoming part of the Big 12, since they're losing UCLA and USC anyway.
All right, Don Mills, thanks for the nice words. And, hey, it's a shame. The Pac-12's been around a long time. Yep. USC, UCLA, flagship members.
100 years.
Things don't last forever, and the Ringling Barnum Circus or whatever lasted, 150 years or whatever it was back in the 1800s.
Then it just stopped, right?
Things ended. I was taught at school everything has a shelf life. And I said, no, come on. You're telling me that we're not going to be using Kleenex tissues in 100 years? And they said, well, you don't know. You don't know what could come along.
Maybe we don't have colds or flus or viruses, and you don't need Kleenex anymore. What I was going to say is, what about the Rose Bowl? And you're going to have the Rose Bowl, obviously. Yeah. But what's their configuration going to be? Do you then say, okay, this new Big 12 gets the Pac-12 spot against the Big 10? Maybe.
Very possibly. All these bowl games are going to have to be shaken up.
Yeah, they could be. They could very well be. Although they've changed, Jason, since we were kids. The bowls have all changed because of trying to play for a national championship, and certainly the bowl configuration has changed since they've gone to the 4-team playoff, which we all hope will get a little bit bigger than 4 teams. But the Rose Bowl is still the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. It'll be a little different if it's the Big 10 versus the Big 12 instead of the Big 10 versus the Pac-12.
Well, as long as Arizona, one day. It'll happen. It won't happen this year, but it'll happen. And the Chicago Cubs won the World Series
finally. Yeah,
Red Sox broke the curse.
Yeah,
this is going to take a little longer. It's a little tougher here, but. but it'll happen. So,
but it won't happen, Jason, if the Pac-12, if Arizona stays in the Pac-12 and it becomes another Mountain West conference. Then
Oregon State and Washington State are in trouble right now.
Yes, Yeah, they better hope for a Pac-12 merger
Yeah.
into the Big 12,
And
to
you
make
got to
it
think
a
they're
20-team
lobbying
conference.
for that.
Yeah,
You know,
you
you
would
got to
think
think
so.
they're lobbying for
That
that.
they
So,
would say, let's make it a 20-team conference and do, the Eastern Division and the Western Division.
all right. So for those who are loyal viewers of the show, you notice we weren't on last week. That was because of my COVID, and we're not going to be on for the next couple weeks because of my vacation, unless I believe, unless Pat does it.
Well, no, unless something happens with this Pac-12 situation, and we,
Yeah.
maybe we'll do a show on a Tuesday, and I'll pull you out of your vacation for an hour, half an hour,
Listen,
or something like
if
that.
if something big breaks, we're
Yeah.
not going to
Right.
be at the beach.
That's right. Well, you might be at the beach. Like we were on the road to San Antonio once. Why couldn't you go to live from the beach? But you know what I'm saying.
That was a bad 15 minutes, Pat. I was so cold.
It was bad.
Middle of Texas, the wind was blowing.
West Texas.
That was not a highlight of 2022.
No.
That was not a highlight.
But
of
we made
2022.
it. We made the show must go on, Jason.
All right, listen.
Just like the Pac-12 somehow.
And maybe we'll also get to talk a little bit about the Suns because you know what I want to see happen to DeAndre Ayton.
Well, he's probably going to be signed and traded, but we'll have to see.
I want to see him go to the Nets for Durant.
Yeah. Well, that would be something. I mean, it's talked about. We'll see if that happens.
What I would like to see.
I heard that they want some, a little bit more substantial, so that might involve a third team. It could have to be a 3-team transaction.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
All right. Well, that's been the Huddle for this Tuesday. This is airing, by the way, Tuesday the 5th at 3 p.m. West Coast time. So
things could happen, right?
If you're watching on OTT a couple days from now and things have changed, well, things have changed. But that's where we stand right now, July 5th at 3 o'clock here on the West Coast. All right, Pat. For Pat Parris, I'm Jason Barr of K-Gun 9. It's been the Huddle, our streaming sports talk show, just about every Tuesday at this time. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll be right back here. We'll see you when we'll see you when we see you. We'll put it that way. Take care, everybody.